What happens when one of Hollywood's most respected actors sits down for what should be a simple interview, only to face disrespect, mockery, and attacks on everything he stands for? In just 34 seconds of one comment, Stephen Colbert turned a friendly conversation into a battle that would end with Denzel Washington walking off the set in front of millions of viewers. Denzel Washington walked onto the stage that evening like he always does, with grace, humility, and that trademark smile that has won over audiences for decades. The crowd erupted. They loved him. They always have. He waved, shook Stephen's hand, and sat down in the guest chair, ready to talk about his latest film, his career, and maybe share some laughs. Stephen Colbert started the interview normally enough. He welcomed Denzel, made a few jokes about the weather, and asked about the new movie. Denzel answered every question with thoughtfulness and charm. He talked about the hard work that went into the film, the amazing cast, and what the story meant to him personally. The audience was hanging on every word. But then something shifted. Stephen leaned back in his chair with this smirk on his face, and you could feel the energy in the room change. He looked at Denzel and said, "So, you've been making movies for, 40 years now? That's a long time. Do you ever feel like maybe you're just doing the same thing over and over again? Like, how many times can you play the strong, silent hero before it gets old?" The audience went quiet. Denzel kept his composure, smiled politely, and said, "Well, Stephen, I think every character I play is different. I try to bring something unique to each role, something real. It's not about repeating myself. It's about telling stories that matter." Stephen waved his hand dismissively. Sure, but come on. You've got to admit, there's a formula, right? Denzel walks in, Denzel looks tough, Denzel saves the day. I mean, we've all seen it 100 times. You could see the disrespect in his tone. This wasn't playful banter. This was condescension. Denzel shifted slightly in his seat, but kept his cool. "I respect your opinion, Stephen, but I disagree. Every project I choose means something to me. I'm not just showing up to collect a paycheck." Stephen laughed, but it wasn't a friendly laugh. It was mocking. "Oh, come on, Denzel. You're telling me every movie is some deep, meaningful experience? Even the action movies where things just blow up for 2 hours?" The audience was uncomfortable now. Some people weren't sure if this was part of the act or if things were actually getting tense. Denzel took a breath and said calmly, "Action movies can have meaning too, Stephen. Just because something is entertaining doesn't mean it's shallow. I think audiences deserve more credit than that." Stephen rolled his eyes. Actually rolled his eyes on camera. Okay, let's move on. Let's talk about something else. Your faith. You talk about God a lot, don't you? Denzel nodded. "I do. My faith is important to me. It's guided me through my life and my career." Stephen leaned forward with that same smirk. "Right, but don't you think that's a little old-fashioned? I mean, we're in the 21st century. Do people really still need all that religious stuff? Isn't it just kind of, outdated?" The audience gasped. You could hear it ripple through the room. Denzel's face changed. The smile was gone. He stared at Stephen for a long moment, and when he spoke, his voice was firm. "My faith is not outdated, Stephen. It's what keeps me grounded. It's what reminds me to be humble, to be kind, to be grateful. I don't push it on anyone, but I'm not going to apologize for it either." Stephen shrugged like it was nothing. "Hey, I'm just saying, a lot of people think religion causes more problems than it solves. Wars, division, all that stuff. Don't you ever think about that?" Denzel's jaw tightened. "I think people cause problems, Stephen, not faith. Faith teaches love, compassion, forgiveness. If people twist it into something else, that's on them, not on God." Stephen let out this exaggerated sigh, like he was bored. All right, we get it. You're a believer. Good for you." His tone was dripping with sarcasm. The audience was silent now, watching this unfold with disbelief. But Stephen wasn't done. He flipped through his note cards and said, "Let's talk about Hollywood. You've been in this industry forever. You've seen it all. What do you think about the way things are going now? All the diversity talk, the representation, the politics. Is it all just a little too much?" Denzel looked at him carefully. "I think representation matters. I think everyone deserves to see themselves on screen. I think stories from all backgrounds make the industry richer, better." Stephen laughed again, that same mocking laugh. "But doesn't it feel forced sometimes? Like, do we really need to check every box? Does every movie need to be some political statement?" Denzel sat up straighter. "It's not about checking boxes, Stephen. It's about reflecting the real world. The world is diverse. Movies should be too. That's not politics. That's just reality. Steven waved him off. Yeah, but some people think it's gone too far. Some people think Hollywood is just pandering now. Denzel's voice got louder, more forceful. Some people are wrong, and honestly, Steven, I'm surprised you're even asking me this. You sit here in your comfortable chair, in your comfortable studio, and you question whether people deserve to be seen and heard? That's not just ignorant, that's insulting. The audience started to murmur. Some people clapped, others looked shocked. Steven's face turned red. He clearly didn't expect Denzel to push back this hard. He tried to laugh it off. Whoa, Denzel, relax. I'm just asking questions here. It's a talk show. That's what we do. Denzel shook his head. No, Steven, you're not just asking questions. You've been disrespectful since I sat down. You mocked my career, you mocked my faith, and now you're dismissing the importance of representation. I came here to have a conversation, not to be insulted. Steven's tone turned defensive, almost aggressive. Oh, come on, you're being too sensitive? This is comedy. This is entertainment. If you can't handle a little back and forth, maybe you shouldn't be doing interviews. That was the moment. That was when everything changed. Denzel stared at Steven, and the look in his eyes was pure fire. He stood up slowly, never breaking eye contact. The audience held their breath. You could hear a pin drop in that studio. Denzel spoke quietly, but every word cut like a knife. I've been doing interviews for decades, Steven. I've been asked tough questions, challenging questions, and I've always handled them with respect. But what you're doing here isn't challenging, it's disrespectful. You think you can sit behind this desk and talk down to me? You think you can mock what I believe in, what I stand for, and I'm just going to smile and take it? Steven tried to interrupt. Denzel, I think you're overreacting. Denzel held up his hand. No, I'm done. I came here to talk about my work, to connect with people, to share something positive. But you turned this into something ugly. You wanted a show? You wanted drama? Congratulations, you got it. But I'm not going to sit here and be part of it. He unclipped his microphone, set it gently on the chair, and turned toward the audience. They erupted in applause. People were standing, cheering for him. Some were shouting support. Denzel gave them a small nod, a wave, and started walking toward the exit. Steven, now realizing how badly this was going, tried to recover. Denzel, wait, come on, let's just talk about this. Don't leave. We can finish the interview. Denzel stopped at the edge of the stage and looked back. There's nothing left to talk about, Steven. You showed everyone exactly who you are tonight, and I'm not going to waste another second of my time here. And with that, he walked off. The audience was still clapping, some people were shouting his name, and Steven just sat there, stunned, staring at the empty chair. His producers were scrambling, the cameras kept rolling, and you could see the panic on everyone's faces. Steven tried to make a joke, tried to laugh it off, but his voice was shaky. Well, that was unexpected. Denzel Washington, everybody. I guess he had somewhere to be. But nobody laughed. The audience wasn't having it. They knew what they just witnessed. In the control room, the director was yelling into headsets, trying to figure out how to salvage the show. But there was no saving this. The damage was done. Steven had pushed one of the most respected men in Hollywood too far, and Denzel had done what so many guests probably wish they could do. He stood up for himself and walked away. Backstage, Denzel was met by his team, who were equal parts shocked and proud. One of his assistants asked if he was okay, and Denzel just nodded. I'm fine. I've dealt with worse. But I'm not going to sit there and let someone disrespect me on national television. I don't care who they are. Meanwhile, back on stage, Steven was trying to transition to a commercial break, but the energy in the room was completely off. The audience was still buzzing, still talking about what just happened. Some people were pulling out their phones, already posting about it on social media. Within minutes, the clip was everywhere. Twitter was exploding. Facebook was flooded. Everyone was talking about Denzel walking off Stephen Colbert's show. The producers tried to cut the segment, tried to edit it down, but it was too late. The full exchange was already out there, being shared by millions of people. And the reaction was overwhelmingly on Denzel's side. People were calling Stephen out for being rude, condescending, and disrespectful. They were praising Denzel for standing his ground, for not letting someone talk down to him, even in front of a massive audience. Comments poured in from fans, from other celebrities, from people in the industry. Everyone was saying the same thing. Stephen crossed a line. He treated Denzel like he was beneath him, and Denzel wasn't going to tolerate it. And honestly, why should he? Here's a man who has earned every bit of respect he gets, who has dedicated his life to his craft, who carries himself with dignity and grace, and some talk show host thinks he can just mock him for laughs. Back in the studio, the rest of the show was a disaster. Steven tried to continue with his other segments, but nothing landed. The energy was gone. The audience was distracted. Everyone was still thinking about Denzel walking off. Steven's jokes fell flat. His interviews with the other guests felt awkward and rushed. It was clear that the highlight of the night, the moment everyone would remember, was Denzel leaving. When the show finally ended, Steven walked off stage in silence. His team tried to reassure him, tried to tell him it wasn't that bad, but he knew better. He knew this was going to follow him, and it did. The next morning, every news outlet was covering the story. Headlines like, Denzel Washington walks off Colbert after heated exchange, and Stephen Colbert faces backlash after disrespectful interview were everywhere. Talk shows, radio programs, podcasts, everyone was dissecting what happened, and the consensus was clear. Stephen messed up. People started digging into the interview, breaking down every comment Stephen made, every dismissive gesture, every mocking laugh. They pointed out how he questioned Denzel's career, his faith, his beliefs, all while acting like it was just harmless fun. But it wasn't fun. It was mean-spirited, and Denzel called him out on it. Even other hosts weighed in. Some defended Stephen, saying it was just a tough interview, that guests need to be able to handle criticism. But most people disagreed. There's a difference between asking tough questions and being disrespectful. Stephen crossed that line. He treated Denzel like he was there to be the butt of a joke, and Denzel refused to play along. What made it worse for Stephen was that Denzel handled it perfectly. He didn't yell, didn't curse, didn't throw anything. He simply stated his case, explained why he was leaving, and walked away with his head held high. That's class. That's dignity. And it made Stephen look even worse by comparison. The clip of Denzel walking off became one of the most watched moments of the year. It was shared millions of times, turned into memes, analyzed by media experts, and discussed in classrooms as an example of standing up for yourself. Denzel became even more beloved, if that was possible. People respected him for not backing down, for not letting someone diminish him just because they had a platform. As for Stephen, the backlash was intense. His ratings took a hit. Sponsors started asking questions. His network had to release a statement saying they were reviewing the situation. Stephen himself eventually addressed it, saying he didn't mean to offend Denzel, that it was all just part of the show. But the apology felt hollow. It felt like damage control, not genuine remorse. And here's the thing. Denzel didn't need to go on that show. He's Denzel Washington. He's a legend. He could promote his movies anywhere, talk to anyone, and people would listen. He went on Stephen's show as a courtesy, as a way to connect with the audience, to share his work. And Stephen treated him like he was doing Denzel a favor by having him on. That's the entitlement right there. Stephen acted like he was the star, like Denzel should be grateful to be in his presence. But it's the other way around. Stephen should have been honored to have Denzel on his show. Instead, he used the opportunity to try to look clever, to try to get laughs at Denzel's expense. And it backfired spectacularly. The whole thing was a masterclass in how not to conduct an interview. When you have a guest, especially someone as accomplished and respected as Denzel Washington, you treat them with dignity. You ask thoughtful questions. You challenge them if necessary, but you do it with respect. You don't mock their career. You don't belittle their beliefs. You don't act like they're beneath you. Stephen forgot that. Or maybe he never understood it in the first place. He got comfortable behind that desk, comfortable with the power that comes with hosting a show, and he thought he could say whatever he wanted without consequences. But Denzel reminded him that respect is earned, not given. And if you don't show respect, you don't deserve to have someone like Denzel sitting across from you. The interview, or what was supposed to be an interview, lasted less than 15 minutes before Denzel walked off. 15 minutes. That's all it took for Stephen to destroy what could have been a great conversation. And those 15 minutes will define how people remember that episode, maybe even how they remember Stephen's show during that period. Because when people think back on this moment, they're not going to remember the jokes Stephen tried to make. They're not going to remember the other guests. They're going to remember Denzel standing up, unclipping that microphone, and walking away with dignity. They're going to remember how Stephen tried to diminish a legend and failed miserably. This wasn't just about a bad interview. This was about respect. about knowing your place, about understanding that having a platform doesn't give you the right to treat people however you want. Stephen learned that lesson the hard way, and Denzel taught it to him in front of millions of people. The audience that night knew they were witnessing something special. They knew this wasn't scripted, wasn't planned. This was real. This was a man standing up for himself, refusing to be disrespected, even when it would have been easier to just smile and get through it. That takes courage. That takes strength. And Denzel has both in abundance. As Denzel left the building that night, he didn't look back. He didn't second-guess his decision. He knew he did the right thing, and the world agreed with him. Social media exploded with support. Celebrities tweeted their admiration. Fans created tribute videos. Denzel became a symbol of standing up for yourself, of not letting anyone treat you as less than you are. Meanwhile, Stephen was left to deal with the aftermath. His team scrambled to control the narrative, but there was no controlling this. The truth was out there for everyone to see. Stephen had been disrespectful, condescending, and entitled. And Denzel had put him in his place without raising his voice, without losing his cool, just by standing up and walking away. That's power. That's real power, not the power that comes from sitting behind a desk with cameras pointed at you, but the power that comes from knowing your worth, from refusing to let anyone diminish you, from walking away when you're not being treated right. Denzel showed everyone watching that night what true strength looks like. The interview became a case study in respect, in boundaries, in how to handle yourself when someone tries to bring you down. Students studied it. Professionals analyzed it. Everyone had an opinion. And almost everyone agreed. Denzel did what needed to be done. He stood up for himself, for his beliefs, for his dignity, and he did it with class. Stephen, on the other hand, became an example of what not to do, how not to treat your guests, how not to use your platform, how not to let your ego get in the way of having a real conversation. He wanted to be clever, wanted to get laughs, wanted to show how sharp he could be, but all he showed was disrespect, and it cost him. The entire exchange, from the first dismissive comment to Denzel walking off stage, was a reminder that respect matters, that how you treat people matters, that you can't just say whatever you want because you're the host, because you have the microphone, because you think you're untouchable. Denzel proved that night that nobody is untouchable, that if you disrespect the wrong person, they'll walk away, and you'll be left sitting there, looking foolish, wondering how it all went so wrong. This was supposed to be a simple interview, a chance for Denzel to talk about his work, to connect with fans, to share some stories. Instead, it became a moment that will be remembered for years. Not because of anything Stephen did right, but because of everything he did wrong, and because of how perfectly Denzel handled it. When Denzel walked off that stage, he didn't just walk away from Stephen. He walked away from disrespect, from condescension, from someone who thought they could treat him as less than he is. And in doing so, he sent a message to everyone watching. You don't have to tolerate disrespect. You don't have to sit there and take it. You can stand up, you can speak your truth, and you can walk away. And sometimes, walking away is the most powerful thing you can do. That night, Denzel Washington reminded the world why he's a legend. Not just because of his acting, not just because of his awards, but because of who he is as a person. Someone who knows his worth. Someone who won't compromise his values. Someone who treats others with respect and expects the same in return. And when he doesn't get it, he doesn't make a scene. He simply leaves. With dignity, with grace, with his head held high. And Stephen Colbert was left sitting in that chair, facing an audience that had just witnessed him disrespect one of the greatest actors of all time. An audience that clapped and cheered as Denzel walked away. An audience that knew exactly what they had just seen. A man with integrity, standing up to a host who had none in that moment. The whole thing lasted just over 10 minutes of actual conversation before Denzel had enough. 10 minutes. That's all it took for Stephen to ruin what should have been a highlight of his show. 10 minutes of disrespect, of mockery, of condescension, and one powerful moment of Denzel saying, enough is enough. This is what happens when you forget that the guest is the star, not you. When you forget that your job is to make them look good, to have a real conversation, to create something memorable for the right reasons. Stephen forgot all of that. He made it about himself, about his jokes, about his opinions, and he paid the price. Denzel Washington walked off Stephen Colbert's show because he refused to be disrespected, because he knew his worth, because he understood that some things are more important than finishing an interview. like dignity, like self-respect, like standing up for what you believe in. And millions of people watched him do it, watched him handle it perfectly, watched him show everyone what real class looks like.